I saw the truck before I saw them. A white U-Haul engine still running, parked half up on the sidewalk like someone in a hurry. The back was wide-open crib pieces stacked against boxes labeled nursery. Next to it, a familiar silver sedan, my parents' car. Then, the dented Honda that belonged to Chase, my sister's boyfriend. I didn't get out of mine. I just sat there, both hands still on the wheel. I could see my mother Carol pacing near the entrance of my building. She was on the phone with someone nodding too much. I cracked the window. "Yes, the locksmith should be here any minute," she said. "My daughter gave us permission, but she forgot to leave the key." My daughter. She wasn't talking about Kayla. I stepped out, slowly pulled my phone from my coat pocket and dialed 911 with steady fingers. The dispatcher asked if there was an emergency. I said yes. "My name is Natalie Blake. I live at 1447 Elmsworth Avenue, and there are people trying to break into my apartment." I hadn't spoken to any of them in over 2 weeks. Inside the truck, I recognized a rocking chair I hadn't seen since Kayla moved in with Chase. A box of baby bottles. A folded-up playpen. I hadn't told anyone I'd be gone today. They'd just assumed. I stood there in the cold, watching my family unload my future without asking, and all I could think was, when did they decide my home was theirs to take? Because this wasn't just over a nursery. It had started long before, and back then, I didn't even know what I was giving away. I bought my apartment 2 years ago. It's not big, not flashy, but every square foot has my name written into it because I earned it the long way. After college, I lived in a studio over a dry cleaner. The walls sweated in the summer and froze in the winter. I kept my groceries in a mini fridge and my clothes in bins under the bed. Rent was cheap, and that was the point. I worked at a marketing firm by day and picked up freelance copywriting at night. I skipped dinners out. I skipped holidays. I said no to girls' trips, birthdays, and weekends away. I ate canned soup and oatmeal. I sent my full-time paycheck to savings and lived off the scraps of my side gigs. When I hit my 7th year, I had enough for a down payment. I cried signing the mortgage papers, not because I was scared, but because it felt like the first time in my adult life that something finally belonged to me. It's a 2-bedroom in a quiet part of town. Nothing extravagant, just brick walls, north-facing windows, and a tiny balcony that gets good sun in spring. I turned the second room into a home office. I work hybrid, 3 days remote, 2 in office, and that room kept me sane through pandemic burnout and budget layoffs. My parents, Carol and Frank, came to see it once. Carol walked through it like she was taking inventory. Frank tapped the walls and said solid bones. Then they didn't say much. No congratulations. No real reaction. They told me later they thought I was rushing into ownership, but I didn't buy this place to prove anything. I bought it because I was tired of asking permission just to feel safe. Every inch of it was mine. The coffee ring on the nightstand. The dull scrape where my office chair wore the floor down. Even the smell pine cleaner and lavender smelled like me. That's what they tried to take. Not just a space, but the only thing in my life I didn't have to justify keeping. My sister Kayla and I grew up in the same house, but it never felt like we grew up in the same family. She was always the softer one, curly-haired, dramatic, and endlessly adored. I was quieter, sharper at the edges. I did my homework. I remembered to feed the dog. I packed my own lunch by 5th grade. Kayla forgot her shoes to school once, and they brought them to her wrapped in a towel like she was Cinderella. It wasn't blatant, not at first. Just small things that added up. Kayla got the bigger bedroom. I got her hand-me-down furniture. If we fought, I was told to be the bigger person. If she cried, I was told to give her what she wanted, just this once. I learned early that if I stayed useful, I'd stay out of trouble. By high school, the gap had widened. I was applying for scholarships while Kayla was sneaking out with boys who never stayed long. She dropped out of college her first semester, tried again a year later, and left before midterms. She's worked at a dozen places, coffee shops, boutiques, a yoga studio she didn't even like. None of it stuck. But she always landed on her feet. Our parents, especially Carol, had a way of framing it. She's just finding herself. She's creative. The world's not built for girls like her. And maybe that was true, but it didn't stop the pattern. Every time something fell apart, they caught her, and I kept working. When Kayla announced she was pregnant, no one blinked. She was 10 weeks along, barely showing, but Carol lit up like she'd won the lottery. Frank made a toast at dinner. To new beginnings, Chase sat beside her saying nothing, looking proud like he'd just solved a crossword puzzle. They were thrilled. Their first grandchild. Their second chance. Kayla beamed. I gave her a pair of newborn socks wrapped in tissue. She said cute and moved on. I smiled. I always smile. But inside I felt something shift, something small and sharp, like the first pop of a seam when a fabric's been stretched too tight for too long. It happened on a Sunday. We were sitting at the dinner table in my parents' house. Kayla had been talking about morning sickness like it was a badge of honor. Chase, her boyfriend, said something vague about his band maybe getting a local gig. Carol brought out pie. Then, just as I reached for my coffee, Carol looked at me and said, "We need to talk about your apartment." I thought she meant the location, maybe asking about the neighborhood or whether there was noise at night. But no, she meant the apartment itself. It's a great space, she said. Perfect layout, plenty of light, and it's close to the park. Frank nodded like this was a business pitch. Babies need space. A nursery. You're just one person, Nat. It's not like you need 2 bedrooms. I blinked. I do need 2 bedrooms, I said. One's my office. Carol smiled like she didn't hear me. Kayla and Chase are really tight on space. That little 1 bedroom won't work once the baby comes. Chase kept eating. Kayla was quiet, rubbing her stomach like it meant something more than 10 weeks should. You want me to let them move in? I asked. They didn't blink. Frank shrugged. It's just logical. You can find something smaller. You'd even save on monthly costs. Not rented, I clarified. Give it family helps family, Carol said. And someday when you have kids, Kayla will help you. Kayla smiled soft and closed. She didn't offer a word of thanks, just looked at me like the outcome had already been decided. I set my coffee down. No, not loud, not angry, just solid. That's when Carol's eyes watered. I just thought, with everything your sister's going through, Frank added, it's not about the property. It's about people. Then Kayla spoke her first words all evening. Some people just aren't meant to be aunts. I stood up and walked out. The texts started that night. Articles about family values, infographics about single occupancy versus family living, a spreadsheet no joke from Frank explaining optimal square footage by head count. Then the phone calls. From Carol. From Diane, my aunt. From cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Each message carried the same undercurrent. I was being selfish. I was making a pregnant woman homeless. I was letting the family down. And no one, not a single one, asked why I said no. The thing about my family is they don't scream. They nudge. They imply. They layer guilt so gently it feels like love. Over the next week, I became a problem to solve. Carol sent me daily texts, quotes about sisterhood videos of babies giggling a photo of Kayla's bump that frankly looked like bloating. She's glowing, she wrote. This baby needs roots. Frank emailed me a cost breakdown. It showed how much I could save if I moved into a studio across town. He color-coded it, labeled 1 cell emotional ROI. Kayla posted on Facebook. Some people just don't understand it takes a village. Grateful for those who do. I didn't reply, but Diane did. So did 3 cousins. The comments turned into a chain of thinly veiled digs at me. Kids show you who's really generous. Some folks forget who held them through the flu at age 5. I started dreading my phone. Every ding felt like a warning shot. I tried to explain that Kayla wasn't homeless, that she lived with her boyfriend in a functioning apartment, that I worked from home, that my mortgage wasn't something I could just break. No one heard it. Or maybe they did, but they'd already written the story in their heads, and in that version, I was the villain. What cut deepest wasn't the pressure. It was the assumption that I could be sacrificed without asking. They didn't offer to let Kayla stay with them. They didn't suggest a loan or help finding a bigger rental. It was always my apartment, my space, my life that needed to move out of the way, because I always figured it out. I always said yes. I was the dependable one, the strong one, the one who made things work while Kayla unraveled. And for the first time in my life, I began to wonder, was being dependable just another way of being disposable? I brought all of it, every screenshot, Every voicemail to therapy. My therapist looked at me and said, "You're allowed to want a door that only opens from the inside." That line sat in my chest for days. Because that's all I ever wanted, really. A space that didn't come with conditions. A life that didn't require permission. I thought maybe if we talked in person it would help. So I invited everyone Carol, Frank, Kayla, and Chase over to my apartment for lunch that Saturday. I wanted it to be calm. Neutral territory. I even made pasta salad from my mother's recipe, thinking it might soften things. They showed up 45 minutes early. I was still chopping basil when I heard my front door unlock. My mother still had a spare key from when I first moved in. I never thought to take it back. That would change. Carol walked in like she'd never left. Frank followed holding a laptop bag. Then Kayla rubbing her belly again. Then Chase. Then surprise Aunt Diane and her husband Michael. I hadn't invited them. I asked what they were doing here, and Carol said we thought it would help to have family present, just to keep things constructive. Chase dropped onto my couch and picked up my PS5 controller like it belonged to him. Kayla started walking through the apartment slowly like a realtor surveying a new listing. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Frank opened his laptop at the dining table. I put together a short presentation, just some thoughts on space utilization. You'll find the logic pretty sound. Carol began rearranging my spice rack. I told everyone to sit down, but Diane beat me to it. "Natalie, we're here because we love you, and because family means sometimes doing things that aren't easy." Then came the speeches. Frank spoke about sacrifice, Diane about how her generation understood duty. Kayla talked about her morning sickness. Chase mentioned that his band might need a garage for practice. My building doesn't have a garage. I waited, I listened, and when it was my turn, I spoke softly. I said I understood their concerns. I wasn't heartless. I loved my sister. But this apartment was mine, not a community resource. I offered to help Kayla look for a new place. I even said I'd contribute toward a deposit up to $1,000. Kayla stood up. "I just need to see something," she said, and walked straight into my bedroom. I followed. She was in my closet with her phone flashlight out, scanning the walls. "This would be perfect for the nursery," she said. "The closet's big enough for a changing table." "What are you doing?" I asked. "Just planning ahead. Mom said you'd come around." Back in the office, Carol was measuring the wall with a tape measure. That's when I knew. This wasn't a discussion. It never had been. The next morning, I changed the locks. It felt ridiculous, like overreacting, but I couldn't shake the image of my mother with a measuring tape in my office and Kayla in my closet, mapping out a future they never asked if I was part of. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 days later, I got a text from Kayla with a Pinterest board titled Natalie's Apartment Nursery Ideas. It had 47 pins, color swatches, crib options, a glider that cost more than my rent used to. The caption said, "So excited." The next morning, Carol called sobbing. She'd tried to let the designer in and had been humiliated when the locksmith turned her away. "Why are you making this harder than it needs to be?" she said. That same afternoon, the property manager from my building called. Someone he wouldn't say who, but we both knew had tried to add Kayla and Chase to my lease. When told only I could make that change, they asked about family transfer policies. There weren't any. The day after that, my security camera buzzed. 2 figures at my front door. One was Kayla. The other was a woman in business casual holding a clipboard. They tried multiple keys for nearly 10 minutes before giving up. That night, the family group chat lit up. Carol Natalie refused to let the nursery designer in. She wasted $200. Kayla. "Some aunt you turned out to be." Frank. "Your mother hasn't stopped crying." "Happy now." More comments followed, some from cousins I barely knew, some from relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years. All of them carried the same message: I was the reason the family was falling apart. Friday morning, I woke to 14 missed calls. Kayla had created a public Facebook event, Help Kayla Move into Her New Home. The location, my address. 23 people had RSVP'd. I commented, "This is my apartment. Kayla does not live here and will not be moving in." The event was deleted within the hour. But not before screenshots were shared in the group chat with captions like "cruelty documented" and "imagine doing this to your own sister." I'd always known they underestimated me. Now, I was starting to understand by how much. 3 weeks later, things went quiet. Too quiet. No texts, no calls, no new group chat wars. I let myself believe for a moment that maybe they were backing down. They weren't. That Thursday, while I was at the office downtown, my actual office, not the one in my apartment, I got a text from my neighbor, Kevin. "Hey, everything okay? There's a moving truck outside. Thought you were going on vacation." My stomach dropped. I opened the app for my security cameras, and there it was clear as day. A U-Haul parked out front. Carol's car in the visitor spot, Kayla's Honda behind it. The back of the truck already open, filled with boxes labeled Baby Clothes Nursery and Books Chase. I left work without telling anyone. That 20-minute drive felt like hours. When I pulled up, I saw the crib from Kayla's old apartment. A stack of diaper boxes. The rocking chair again. My name was still on the door, but they were preparing to erase it. I ran to the building, heart pounding. The door was locked, thank God, but I heard voices inside the hallway. I pressed myself to the wall and listened. Carol was on the phone. Yes, the locksmith should be here any minute. My daughter meant to leave the key, but she forgot. I hit record on my phone and dialed 911. When the locksmith arrived, he looked confused. Frank handed him cash. Chase stood nearby, scrolling on his phone like this was all normal. I stepped out before they could touch the lock. "Don't," I said. "I'm the owner. These people do not have permission to enter." Carol's face lit up. Perfect timing. We were just, "No." "I've called the police. You're trespassing." Kayla started crying immediately. "How can you do this to your pregnant sister Chase without looking up, dude? The truck's only rented till 4. The locksmith stepped back. "I'm not getting involved in a family thing," he muttered and left just as the police pulled up. I showed the officers my ID, my lease, the cease and desist letter I'd sent, and the video footage. My parents tried to spin it as a misunderstanding. The officers didn't buy it. Then came the best part. One of the 2 men they'd brought, guys I didn't recognize, got nervous when the officers asked for ID. Turns out he had a warrant for unpaid child support. He was arrested on the spot. The other man admitted he was a tenant relocation specialist. In other words, someone they hired to move me out if I resisted. He left before anyone else could speak. The officers issued an official trespass warning. Any further attempts to enter this property, one of them said, will result in arrest. And still, Frank turned to me and said, "All this? For an apartment? No. All this because you thought I wouldn't fight back." The next morning, I checked my mailbox and found an envelope from my parents. Inside was a rental agreement dated 3 weeks prior, stating that I would be renting my apartment to Kayla for $500 a month. Already signed. By Kayla. With Carol and Frank listed as witnesses. There was a note, "Natalie, we thought this would be fair. You can stay with us until you find something suitable." Mom and Dad, I called my lawyer. We filed a cease and desist order against all 3 of them. I also filed for a restraining order and had the building formally trespass them. I changed my emergency contacts at work, removed them from my banking info and insurance beneficiaries. Then I blocked their numbers except through legal channels. The family chat exploded. Diane called me cruel. My cousin Mark texted, "Wow. Money really does change people." Uncle Glenn chimed in. "Your grandparents would be ashamed." Carol sent one final message, "I don't have a daughter anymore." Frank added, "All this for an apartment. Hope you enjoy living alone forever." Only one voice came quietly. "Rachel, my cousin messaged me privately. Saw the footage. They're out of their minds. Stand your ground." I posted the video to my own Facebook. No caption. Just the raw truth. In the days that followed, the harassment hit a different gear. Someone sent 5 food delivery orders I never made. My number showed up on a Craigslist post offering a free PS5. I started getting dozens of spam newsletters. 3 locksmiths called about a lockout request I hadn't submitted. Then came the lawsuit. I received a certified letter from their lawyer my family was suing me for emotional distress, breach of verbal contract, unlawful eviction damages for moving truck rental and storage fees. They wanted $15,000 and the apartment. My lawyer laughed when he read it. Actually laughed. He filed a countersuit for attempted fraud, harassment, illegal entry, and defamation. Then discovery began. And that's when everything broke open. Texts between Kayla and Chase's mom subpoenaed as part of the fraud charge revealed their full plan. Move in. Let me keep paying the mortgage. Stop paying anything once the baby arrived. Claim I couldn't evict a family with a child. Eventually take over the apartment altogether. Kayla even wrote, "Once we're in a year, squatters' rights kick in." We looked it up. They didn't look it up well. That's not how it works in our state. The lawsuit didn't last long. 3 weeks after filing, it was tossed out. The judge called it baseless and a clear misuse of the court's time. Their own attorney, some poor man probably hoping for a quiet retirement, apologized to mine in the hallway. He'd advised against the case, but Carol and Frank were determined to be heard. They were. Just not the way they wanted. My countersuit moved forward. We had the texts, the security footage, the forged rental agreement. We had Chase's mom's statements and the timeline to match. Harassment was clear, the calls, the messages, the food deliveries, the locksmiths. Trespassing stuck, even if they didn't technically break in. Fraud. That was the crown jewel. Kayla got 18 months probation and 100 hours of community service. Carol and Frank received 12 months each for conspiracy. The court ordered them to pay $7,500 in damages and cover all legal fees. They were given 6 months to pay. I didn't post the verdict. I didn't message the group chat. I didn't call Rachel to celebrate. I just went home. Rachel told me later that Diane deleted all her Facebook posts. Uncle Glenn stopped returning Carol's calls. A few cousins quietly unfriended Kayla. I didn't care. I wasn't tracking sides anymore. Kayla gave birth to a girl 2 months later. I found out through Rachel. I haven't seen the baby. I don't intend to. Maybe that makes me cruel, maybe not. But I've stopped living in the house of maybe. I got a promotion. Turns out when you're not fighting off a family coup, you actually sleep better, work better, feel better. I turned the office into a gaming space, repainted, rearranged, not to forget, just to reclaim. Last week, my lawyer forwarded me a letter, 3 handwritten pages from Carol. She missed me. The family had changed. She wanted to move past this. There was no apology, no mention of what they tried to do, just paragraphs about her grief, her disappointment, her hurt. I read it once. Then I folded it up and dropped it in the trash. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need revenge. I just needed it to be over. I haven't spoken to Kayla since the court date. Not when she gave birth. Not when Carol posted a blurry photo of the baby swaddled in pink with the caption, "The light at the end of everything." Not when Chase disappeared from the picture 3 weeks later, packed up his gear, and moved to LA like he'd always said he would. He'd had $23,000 saved. Separate account. Rachel found out through his mother, who was just as blindsided. Kayla had no idea. Turns out he'd never planned to stay. Not with her. Not with the baby. Now she lives back at home. 5 people in one house, Kayla, the baby, Carol, Frank, and the echoes of a plan that didn't work. Frank picked up extra shifts. Carol retired early to help with childcare. Rachel says the baby cries a lot, that Kayla's overwhelmed, that Carol is too tired to pretend it's fine. Sometimes I think about the baby. She didn't ask for any of this. She didn't lie. She didn't manipulate. She was just born into a storm. So I did one thing. I set up a trust, small but solid, just enough to give her a choice one day. She won't know about it until she turns 18. Kayla won't be able to access it. There's no note, no card. Oh, no strings. It's not for them. It's for her. For the girl born into a mess I didn't make but refused to clean up. I don't know if she'll understand. Maybe she'll resent me for not being around. Maybe she'll never even know my name. But if someday she opens a letter with her college acceptance or signs a lease she chose for herself, or simply looks around and realizes she's free, then that will be enough. That will be mine.